Okay, this is one of the weird ones that, um, other than Bottle Show, I can't really think of a good way to describe this episode. Because this is the episode where the Enterprise D hits a random space anomaly while flying through the galaxy from one place to another, and things go horribly, horribly wrong. Anyways, note in this picture how the Enterprise appears to be blacked out. The usual running lights and glows are all gone. Just a few open windows with a little bit of light peeking out through them. Yeah, the main power on the ship got knocked out. All we have left is a few emergency backup systems working, and not even all of those. As a plot device for a story, I mean, it's an easy throwaway episode. I mean, like, if you're doing a TTRPG, this is one of those things where, you know, and then something happens kind of introduction where it's not really so much the plot being particularly interesting in and of itself, but it does give players a reason to do something. Like, hey, here's something to do today. Quite frankly, though, this is the sort of thing where this episode rarely gets referenced later on because, well, there's honestly not that much in the episode that's actually interesting. It's a negative space wedgie. Find the solution to the negative space wedgie. Leave. And go back to your normal lives. Forget the whole thing happened. Which also applies to the people who watch the episode for the most part. Kind of a bad thing, though, and I suspect that doing one like this for a group of TTRPG would be, well, unenthusiastic. I mean, it's certainly an episode of the week that might be fun as a change of pace, though. So, fighting a war against some weird alien force on a distant planet. And then this happens. So, you have something that's a quick one and done. Eh, options. It's good as an option. I wouldn't make this a mainstay. It's just not something I personally think would be good as a mainstay. But, adding a little spice to keep things from getting boring. Sure. I think this would be a great option as variety. Anyway, so what exactly happens? Well, the various crew are doing their normal crew tasks. Oh yeah, Picard gets this thing because he has nothing better to do. Picard is giving a tour of the ship to several children who live on the ship. Oh, also, this is the episode where Brent Spiner sings "I am the very model of a modern major general" uh, as part of the episode. Which that got sent around as a meme, but I don't think you would be likely to have one of your players do something like that. I mean, maybe if your players are into it, they could do that, but I wouldn't expect such a thing. And that's the other thing with this episode is that it's all about the characters making choices and doing things, and you have the setup, and you literally just have characters doing things. You don't have an enemy to handle. It's just the scenario. Which, that's one of the limitations with something like this is that it needs to be very, very heavy on the keying it to what your players like. And you'd have to choose that rather carefully for this. Otherwise, a lot of people would just get bored if all their task was for the entire episode is just fixing the ship. Some might not. Some might enjoy this. So, something to consider is how much your players like tedious and mundane episodes. Actually, the nature of this negative space wedgie would also be what determines how tedious and mundane it is, because in this episode, it was a cosmic filament or quantum filament that really didn't do a whole lot after it hit the ship, because the ship hits it and the ship gets crippled by hitting it, and that's as far as the quantum filament goes in the episode. It doesn't stick around. It's not an ongoing hazard. The damage to the ship is now the ongoing hazard, which is quite extensive, honestly. Having a negative space wedgie like this be the reason why a third party decides to attack you and try to take the crew of your ship hostage and capture your vessel as a prize is an option you could do. Stacking this with a alien of the week who decides to take advantage of your momentary weakness is a viable option if you wanted to, spice things up a little bit. But it's not actually part of this episode as aired. This episode as aired is just a disaster movie. Something happened. We all have to fix it or die. No, seriously. Having main power offline means that they need to scramble to keep the warp core from breaching due to antimatter containment failure. Which, yeah, antimatter containment failure. Minor design defect on this model of Starship, and quite frankly, catastrophic failure is the yeah, the ship's just going to completely explode like a bomb. Anyways, so I could go over all of the different things that the various crew people do, and that is actually one of the good points of this episode. Because there are no aliens of the week, they get to have random crewmen who are normally minor characters no one pays attention to actually do things. That's kind of fun. And that is actually something where if you're doing this as a TTRPG session, you could actually have the various players get assigned damage control teams so that each player now has 2 or 3 NPCs to help them do things. And, go run with that as a way to make things interesting and give people stuff to do and something to engage them, something to make the story feel interesting to them instead of being a boring stage play where you push the button and then the warp core resumes working normally. Yeah, again, lots of different things on the ship are broken. Different characters have to do different things because they can't even just hail each other on comms because internal communications are down too. Again, main power is completely out. Oh yeah, there's also this scene. Yeah, several things are horribly wrong that shouldn't be horribly wrong, and they have to come up with creative solutions to fixing them. Note, you are probably not going to have a Soong type android as one of your crew, so I wouldn't recommend um, directly copying this one. However, you know, a similar hazard with a different solution is a possibility. Like I said, there's a wide variety of things that came up that needed fixed. Like Picard and the kids got trapped in a turbo lift and had to figure out how to get out of the turbo lift without, falling to their deaths. Stuff like that. Oh, right. Also, as a hilariously bad moment of timing, this is also the moment when Keiko ends up giving birth to her child. Yeah, that was interesting. Although, to be honest, this is actually one of those things I saw someone point out to me who's a medical professional. That it is actually a legit thing that a woman who is nearly done with being pregnant, it's eventually gets to this point where it's just like your body just kind of like randomly decides at some point that it's done, and anything that causes stress can basically trigger labor. So yeah, it is actually a thing that people will actually have that happen to them. It's part of the reason why people who are escorting a pregnant woman to the hospital will be very, very careful to not, jiggle her too hard or something like that, because they're worried about having that cause the woman go into early labor before they get to the hospital. Yeah, real world medicine. You may have learned something if you didn't know that already. Anyways, it is kind of cute that the way Picard's crew that he personally has to deal with is a bunch of kids that are, eager future space cadets who aren't old enough to actually know what's going on. But since they've lived on a starship most of their lives, they at least understand the basics of, how starships work. So he doesn't have to explain to them things like what a turbolift is. But he does need to explain to them why they shouldn't push the glowing red button. Because, their parents never told them what the glowing red button is for, just to, not touch the button. Anyways, but yeah, this is one of those things where plotting this, you would need to come up with a very long list of potential hazards for the players to encounter. Because you don't have a proper story. This would play out more like a open world exploration thing, where yes, each person might have a single specific thing that that individual is currently occupied with, but um each one is different, and where the person goes after they deal with the immediate problem. Well, you might not guess correctly where they want to go. Although you can do, silly things like, oh, you attempted to enter the botany lab. Unfortunately, the door to the botany lab is stuck and you can't seem to be able to figure out how to pry it open. You should try going somewhere else. You could do that. It actually does kind of sort of fit the in-universe logic, honestly. Players are probably going to be unhappy with it, but it varies depending on the players how annoyed they would be if you tell them no. Anyways, though, that's about it with this one. A lot of the stuff in the episode as aired was very specific to the individual characters, like Data and the weirdness they did with his head, where they literally connected him to the ship's system, so he's directly interfacing with the ship's computer and stuff like that. Worf having to deliver Keiko's baby, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of stuff. Anyways, see you guys next time.